Greetings to everyone, friends. I decided to record this video at night so that you could watch it early in the morning. Of course, for those who are interested, because in my opinion, this is an extremely important topic, because the European Union, in fact, has given its answer regarding how they will deal with Russia, whether they will lift the sanctions. So let's figure it out now, because we have two contradictions. First, they distance themselves and say that it's not the time yet, and we understand why, because the war in Iran has only been going on for 10 days. On the other hand, they are currently setting up all the infrastructure so that at any moment Russian oil can start flowing to them through the pipelines. So let's not get too upset or too happy right now, as they say, let's figure it out. In my view, this is crucial for all Ukrainians wherever they live. Subscribe to the channel, share the video with friends, and share your thoughts. So first of all, the European Commissioner for Energy announced that the European Union will not ease oil sanctions against Russia, despite calls from Hungary. I can say right away that this is being said now because the war hasn't even lasted 2 weeks yet. We'll see how they react in a month or 2 or 3 if this war continues. What is he saying? Russia is waging a terrible war against our friends in Ukraine, and we don't want to indirectly finance this war. By buying Russian energy, we don't need Russian energy. We said no to it, and we will stick to this position. At the same time, he called on European Union countries to lower taxes on electricity, calling it the fastest way to reduce household expenses and support the competitiveness of industry. A very interesting statement. So, on the one hand, we remember that Trump lifted some sanctions from Russia's oil sector and then the European Union. They have repeatedly stated that they will consider options for lifting sanctions on Russia in order to purchase energy resources if there is such a need. And now we see that they are actually making a statement, and this is just one statement, that they will not lift sanctions from Russia, meaning everything will continue. But look at what happens next, because there are still a few very important statements that show they are actually preparing. They are getting ready to buy it, but right now they don't want to make any sudden moves. In my opinion, for one simple reason, right now everyone still hopes that the war will end quickly. We remember previous statements, and for those who haven't seen them, let me remind you that it was officially announced that the European Union has oil and gas reserves for about 3 months, depending on the country, but there are reserves for about 3 months. Plus, there are strategic reserves, meaning they can last for some time, release these reserves, let's say their own strategic stocks, and somehow keep the situation stable. Although we still see that oil prices continue to rise, gasoline and diesel prices at gas stations keep going up, and they have no influence over this. So the only question here is where they will get oil from, where they will get gas from. If the war lasts like this for 3 months, right now the war has only been going on for 2 days, for less than 2 weeks, yes. In fact, today is the 12th or 13th day. So what will they do if the war lasts for 2 or 3 months? And there is a very high chance that the war will last 2 or 3 months, or at the very least that even if the states, I don't know, hypothetically leave Iran, and at the same time do not fulfill the conditions that Iran sets. And there are already reparations, apologies, things like killing Trump and so on, so they go further. Remember, they are blocking the Persian Gulf, they are already mining it. And it's not at all certain that they will stop like that until they get what they want from the United States of America, even if they leave from there. That's why the war could last much longer, and in my opinion, the European Union is preparing this plan B for itself, and we'll talk about all of this now as well. But before that, the J7 countries agreed not to lift sanctions against Russia amid the war in the Middle East. The rise in oil prices caused by the war in the Middle East does not justify lifting sanctions against the Russian Federation. This was announced by Macron at the conclusion of the remote J7 meeting. The participants of the meeting also welcomed the decision of the International Energy Agency to release 400 million barrels of oil from reserves to lower global energy prices. Will this help much? I don't think so, but at the very least, historically, this is one of the largest releases of strategic reserves to stabilize the situation. This hasn't happened for several decades, that's right. Next, Trump, who spoke at the end of the meeting, defended the operation in Iran, stating that although the war has a huge impact on the world, the United States is destroying a major supplier of terrorism. That was also a statement from Trump, meaning Trump is basically doing what he has always done because the war doesn't really have much of an impact on the United States economy. And the dollar, on the contrary, we see that it is only strengthening its position not only compared to the hryvnia but also compared to the euro, although not as much. Then Zelensky stated that lifting sanctions from Russia would mean legitimizing aggression. And if we recall why Europe, the United States, and the entire civilized world are imposing sanctions against Russia, the sanctions were imposed against Russia's aggression. That's it. Well, it's clear here, and we see that Europe is still holding its ground. But now, friends, let's move on to the most interesting part. Because today they say they won't buy Russian oil, but in a week they'll say they have to buy it. Because we'll all freeze and we won't have anything to drive and we won't be able to deliver weapons to Ukraine because we won't have Russian oil and there's nowhere else to buy it. Again, Zelensky is the one providing this information. He states that the leadership of the European Union wants to know when the Druzhba oil pipeline can be restored. This is the same oil pipeline through which Russian oil passes directly through Ukrainian territory to the territory of the European Union. And now let me remind you, there are two countries left that purchase Russian oil, Slovakia and Hungary, but this is at the level of the entire European Union. After the war in Iran began, they maximized their efforts to restore the oil pipeline. This was done so that oil would continue to flow to Hungary and Slovakia. This could be the same plan B for purchasing Russian oil. And we see that the European Union is no longer concerned just about Hungary or Slovakia, but about its overall situation, so that at any moment they could say, pour us a little bit of Russian oil as well. Or, at the very least, they will. At first, Hungary will buy oil from Russia, and then this oil will be refined. Hungary will do it. It will already happen. I don't know, maybe mix it, for example, with some other oil, their own, if they have it, and then sell it as their own Hungarian oil to other countries in the European Union. Well, something like that could happen just as part of an anti-crisis situation. But no matter how you look at it, all this oil will still be coming from Russia, and Russia will be getting the money. Zelensky also mentioned that the issue is being discussed with the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and the President of the European Council, Antonio Costa. We agreed that Ukraine should give the European Union President a possible date for restoration. This means when it will be possible to restore oil supplies from a technical process standpoint in terms of the date. Naftogaz is in contact, they are handling this. Zelensky also said that we should know that only the possibility of oil supply will be restored. We're not talking about restoring from the reservoirs, to put it briefly. In general, he says that we want to restore the oil pipeline, but we don't want to pump oil through it. That's how it looks, and that's something he really wouldn't want. We've already heard this too, but let's remember that the European Union still calculates its own interests, and they live by their own interests, which is probably the right thing to do, unlike Ukraine, which lives by the interests of Europe, because Ukraine is the shield of Europe. You see what I mean? And we also need to clearly understand that right now it matters to them on this Druzhba oil pipeline, so they can receive oil directly from Russia at the moment when they need it most. Despite all these strong statements that we're with Ukraine, that we're all together, let's be honest, if they have to choose between being in solidarity with Ukraine or being left without oil and fuel, with skyrocketing prices and a shattered, ruined economy, then they'll forget about Ukraine and focus on their own economy, because their own interests are still more important than something out there somewhere abroad. Whatever it is, that's my personal opinion. So we see that for now they're saying everything is okay, we won't be buying anything. But for now they don't really need it anyway. They can wait a little longer while Trump gives them some promises that the war will end soon. And basically, we hope that's how it will be. But again, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments. It seems to me that if the war lasts longer than the specified period, like a month and a half or 2 months, as it was already extended by Trump, and yes, they will be buying Russian oil very, very quickly, and will be sending huge amounts of money to Russia, because they need these energy resources. So yes, let me know what you think about this in the comments. It will be very interesting to read them. Thank you all.